Several of you, this is your first, so welcome. You're hearing about this from a text or an email, so that's good to know. And then we've got quite a few new people in here, but I love that you're coming back, so that makes us happy. All right, so ending the poll and closing that, and it's time to get started. All right, good morning, happy Monday, and welcome to the new world and new reality of this online remote teaching. So we are so glad that you were able to join us this morning, and we are looking for ways to be able to help you. And we know that this is, like someone just said, this is just like starting completely from scratch. And so that's why I wanted you to respond. You know, what is something new that you have learned or tried this week? And we know that for a lot of people, it is a lot. And for our team specifically, I don't think any of us had ever done a webinar like this before, so, and we've played with Zoom, but not in this kind of way. So this is all new for us. So we're just all learning. If any of you are Brene Brown fans, I love podcasts, and a friend sent me this post, and it was connected to her recent podcast, and I loved this quote. So I'll give you a second to read that. Yes, Diana.
Would you mind actually reading that aloud for captioning purposes?
Oh gosh, that makes sense. Of course, yes. We have no relevant experience or expertise. The vulnerability, uncertainty, and fear of those first can be overwhelming. Yet showing up and pushing ourselves past the awkward learner stage is how we get braver. Yes, her book, Dare to Lead, we did a book study last year, just awesome. So in her podcast and in this article, she talks about terrible first times. And she says we're just in this stage of being awkward learners. And so we just have to get used to being uncomfortable. So get comfortable with being uncomfortable these days. We, and like so many of you all, have canceled and postponed all kinds of things. And we decided last week, though, we had a technology conference that was called the Transformative Learning Conference, but we have decided that that is actually a perfect acronym and a perfect model because these are transformative learning conditions. And I think we actually probably have some amazing opportunities to do some new things and learn in some new ways. But then our subtitle of the conference was Lead from Where You Are, and that is also especially fitting because we are leading from our home offices and our couches. And so we're figuring out all kinds of new ways and new beliefs. So I wanted to let you know this is our webinar team, and these are all the people that you'll see hosting and co-hosting our webinar. So I'm Catherine Laster, and with me in co-hosting Juliana Perkins and Nancy Watson. And we've seen several of our Region 10 people in there as well. And so if you're one of our Region 10 people, pop your information into the chat so we can see those as well. So this week with our Region 10 digital learning webinars, these are the people who are facilitating that. You will get all of the slides. You will have a link to all this information. And so if you want, you can take screenshots, or you can do the, hold your camera up to the computer. And so today we're talking about Google Meet. And here's the super awkward thing. We are using Zoom to do a Google Meet webinar. And so my colleagues Nancy and Juliana and I were trying to work through those things. And this is one of those heartbreaking moments. It's like the professional development about differentiated instruction that's not differentiated. And so we're doing webinars with Zoom rather than Google Meet. So what I did is I've got a lot of screenshots for you, and I've got all these instructions. So you'll be able to use these slides as like click sheets for you to go back to and refer how do you get into all of the different features of this. And then at the very end of the webinar, Juliana has got a Google Meet for us. So if you want to go and play in Google Meet and see all these features that I'm showing you, then you can go and hang out with Juliana for a few minutes. So, and we don't know how that's going to work either. So we were trying this morning, so we'll just see how it goes. So I think really the most, oh, let's see, I've got Sherry and Pearl and Terry. So yay, thanks Region 10 friends for being in here as well. The other thing is, in our 3 days of experiencing these webinars, we have learned so much about video conferencing. And so I think some of the more important things, we're going to share just some mindsets about video conferencing. All right. We saw this on Instagram last week. Have you all seen that? And so here is our team version of this. Now, we've got some young people on our team, so I had to ask, do you all even recognize the Brady Bunch? But they did, so there's the new reality. So what we're going to talk about first is just some of the vocabulary, and then some mindset ideas and some lessons that we've learned this week. And then I will get you into the Google Meet specifics, and then you'll be able to play in Google Meet with Juliana. How does that sound? All right. So, one of my friends said a new vocabulary word she learned was synchronous, and I know that Lori and some of our other colleagues have talked about this in their webinars. And so this is a real-time synchronous video conference. And so we are talking live, we're responding live to the chat, and I'm watching the chat as well and trying to respond to your questions. And so the two most popular tools right now are Zoom, which is what we're using, and then Google Meet. And we know that so many of our districts are G Suite, and so that's why the Google Meet is super popular. So we're trying to offer both options so you can see if you have a choice between Zoom and Google Meet, or if you are required to use Google. One thing that we wanted to share is that Google Hangouts used to be what it was called, and then the business side was Meet, but now it's really just kind of Google Hangouts Meet, and you see all of those interchangeably. Asynchronous videos. This is not the real-time type of learning. So if any of you watched the webinars online this weekend, that was asynchronous. It's not live. If you are familiar with Flipgrid, and my colleague Misty had some Flipgrid sessions last week, the videos are recorded and then you watch them later. Nancy is doing a session that involves Screencastify next, and that is something that is going to create little videos of your screen or your PowerPoints and things like that. And then we've had a lot of people talk about Seesaw. And so those are a few tools that provide asynchronous types of learning. So the videos are recorded ahead of time, and then you can watch them at any time and any place. All right, so in the chat, can anyone tell me some tools that are both synchronous and asynchronous? Nancy, you want to hum the Jeopardy music while we're waiting for the oh. Thank you.
That's probably enough, huh?
Okay.
It's going to be hard to caption later.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Juliana, for thinking about accessibility. Okay. So, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, you can see the chat, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. So, Yes, Zoom can be, well, I don't know if it can be live, like the things that I was talking about. Um, but the Zoom things that we're doing, so we're doing it live, we're downloading the recording, then we're uploading it to YouTube. So it was synchronous here, and then you can see it any other time. So the ones that I was thinking, and someone mentioned YouTube Live, that is an option where you can watch it in real time live stream, and then the video will be available later. If you're using Marco Polo as an app, that could be something. Periscope is another one through Twitter, Instagram Live. So the videos are live, but then they can be saved with that same platform a little bit later. So there are tools that kind of are allowing both of those features. And so when you're thinking about this new video reality, I wanted to share some things. Have you considered, how do you feel about showing your face on video conferencing? Now, I can't see the numbers here. I'm going to look at my little gallery for a bit, but it looks like we don't have very many people showing their actual cameras. And I know that it's early in the morning, and one of my colleagues this weekend, Kay, said, "Corona hair, don't care." And so I thought that that was kind of the new mentality, but it makes such a difference to see your face. And so thank you. I'm seeing some cameras pop on. Thank you so much for showing your face. And I appreciate that. It makes it, yay. Oh, Emily, hi. Yay, waving and seeing you all. And so you have this hesitation to show your face. All these people were like, I'm not turning on my camera. You need to consider that that's going to be a huge learning curve for all of us, is just to get used to this showing our faces. And so thank you so much for popping in. I do appreciate, and it makes a difference. Oh, with the baby too. Thank you for multitasking there. So this weekend we did a coffee EDU, and so we also had pet therapy. So we had people showing their pets. So my cat occasionally will pop in the screen, so you'll see that. So think about your kids. I have had many times those kids who are so introverted and so shy, and if you're asking them to do this live, that is going to be hard for people. And not everyone, I saw a tweet, not everyone wants to be a TikTok or a YouTube star. And so how are we going to build this safety in this community so that you feel comfortable showing your faces? So that's one of the first big mindsets, and one of the first things that I wanted to pass on. So thank you all for turning on your cameras. All right, oops. The next issue, very, very important, is thinking about the equity issue. How many of our students are really able to have live video at a particular day and a particular time? So for this synchronous learning, what if your students are trying to babysit their two younger siblings? What if their parents, they have limited devices and their parents have to work from home? They're the only ones that can use the computer, and the kids don't get to use the computer until late in the day. And so I've heard several districts say that they're not doing any synchronous learning, but they're just doing strictly asynchronous learning, and the teachers are recording the videos so that the students can access them anywhere, anytime, on any device. And so I think that is something to really consider, that you know, the person with the child on her lap right now, how difficult is that to try to manage everything? So really, really consider the equity issues there. And then kind of along the same line is the home realities. You know, we've been thinking about, okay, what can you see in my background? And what does, you know, like, I want to make sure something is nice that's showing in the background. And what if the student is running around, or has, you know, is trying to work in their closet, or they're trying to, they're not proud of their surroundings. There are all kinds of other things that are chaos in the background. So thinking about you know, what's really happening in the home and then what's really happening in the background. So, and then I just saw in the chat, someone said, "What? I don't have a camera on my computer." Well, that's another equity issue. Like, I would hope that if you're in a team meeting and you have something like, our norm is we show our faces, but that's not always possible. So definitely considering that. So I just wanted you all to think about a few of those things before we, you know, jump on and say everyone's got to meet at 10 o'clock tomorrow. One other thing is, the beauty of the technology is that this allows us to stay connected and that we can see each other's children. Oh, and then we have pet therapy going on. We see a puppy in the screen, and we can see, like, this is my house, and this is, you know, here's my child, and here are my health and wellness joy bots and my Harry Potter book collection and those kinds of things. And so this allows us to stay connected. This weekend we did a coffee EDU where we just met up and had a little conversation. On Sunday I met with a friend and we had a virtual coffee. So yay technology, yay Zoom, thank you Google Meet for allowing those kinds of things. And then the last thing, and I said this in my mindset webinar, really this should be the first thing. There is a lot of crazy going on right now, and we just have to realize the social, emotional impact of it all and how scary it is and the uncertainty of it all and our family situations. And so giving grace and being flexible and just allowing for mistakes. We're all trying new tools. So if something cuts out, or, you know, how many times are we unmuting each other, muting people, those kinds of things, we just have to prioritize that. All right, so with all of that, when you get back to school, if you're already back to school, it's going to be like the first day, and you may need a new syllabus, and you may need a new set of class rules for administrators in the group, thinking about your teaching. You know, what are you doing for your PLCs? What are you doing for your faculty meetings? What are the rules? And again, you will get my slides at the end. So I've got a link to someone, I found this on Twitter, but this teacher created a list of expectations for the students. And then the first one is to always mute your mic. And so when you enter, make sure that your mic is muted. And then when you speak, unmute and then mute it back. We are also going to have to get used to saying, "You're on mute, unmute your mic," or "We can't hear you," or those kinds of things, but get used to that. The next thing is utilize the chat. Since we all can't talk at the same time, then the chat is going to be crucial. And so this is where you are going to connect, is through the chat. So if you haven't put anything in the chat yet, pop into the chat, say hello, say, yes, love the puppy, cute dog, those kinds of things. But the chat feature is going to be important for all of us. Let's see. The next idea is, and I think this is especially important for our students, when you're talking, look at the camera. And I have to kind of remind myself, because I'm trying to look at my slides here, but look at the camera when you're talking to someone else. And that's not a skill that I'm used to having, so practicing that. Okay, another thing is, the teacher said, or in this etiquette guide, it said, if you have a question, put it into the chat. And then, and Nancy's gonna like this, you need to have these digital citizenship conversations about what goes in the chat and how can you respond to each other in kind ways. And so you all can learn from each other in the chat. So communicate this way, communicate via text. So using that chat. All right, and then the last idea is thinking about, what does your background sound like? If you've got a lot of other things going on, if you have a time that you're going to talk and you've got too much noise, wear headphones so we don't hear all of the other dogs barking and things like that. All right, Hand signals, well, and see, that's another thing. I think that's such a great idea. On if you came in early and you saw my poll, my question is always like fist to five. And so if you have a class norm, you could still do your fist to five. Okay, how do you feel this morning? Give me a fist to five to show me how you're feeling today. And I am like, oh, I'm at 2.5. You know, you can see those kinds of things if you've got that camera on. If you have hand signals, Zoom has the capability for you to raise your hand, but it is only on certain devices. But this weekend at Coffee EDU, someone was like, I need to talk. And so they were waving. And so that may be another option for you all. All right. So Nancy found this the other day, and I just had to share because it has become so hysterical. I think we've all had a bingo, and maybe we've had a bingo even today. So thought that was a great. So oh yes, Michelle, thumbs up and thumbs down. So that's another great gesture for especially the littles. Okay. All right. So here we go. Google Meet, finally. But I thought that other stuff was really important to talk about, so I did want to share. So with Google Meet, again, remember it was Hangouts, and people still use the word Hangouts. And so first of all, thank you, Google, so much, because there were people who had evacuated a little bit earlier and they started using Google Hangouts Meet, and they were finding that the kids could mute and unmute each other, and the kids could kick each other out of the room. And Google responded in days, and they fixed that option now. So you have more control in classroom management with the Google Meet. So as the host, you can kick people out of the room, you can mute them, and so you've got that control. So that was the Google listening to all of the teachers' needs, and yes, thank you, Google. So. The second thing is that Google has such a simple interface, and Zoom, we've got a lot of controls here and it's a little bit confusing, but Google Meet, it is super simple. So we really appreciate that. The other advantage is if you are a G Suite school, it integrates so nicely with all of the other Google products. And so with your calendar, and you can upload your docs and access your drive. So that makes things easy. And then you're already used to the interface and the controls. Google Meet works on laptops and Chromebooks and mobile apps. You do have to download the app though. So if the students have iPads or their mobile devices, then they do need to download the app. Also, hooray, thank you, Google. They have offered teachers and schools this upgrade where you can have 250 people in at a time, and you can have live streaming, and you can have recording. And I believe that is until July 1st. However, your administrator, your Google administrator, has to enable those features in their Google admin panel. So if you don't see the record feature when you go on, then start emailing someone to figure out how to get that turned on in the admin panel. But yes, Google is providing that. The live stream, that was a really cool feature, and that's been added again with this premium, and that allows I think it's something crazy like 100,000 viewers on a live stream. So anyway, so I have, and again, you'll get a copy of the slides. I've got 2 documents that give you some ideas for teaching with Google Meet and some other things about Google Meet for you. So those links will be there. All right, so there are 2 ways really that you can schedule a meet. And so the first way is through the calendar. And so you can set up an appointment in the calendar, and then you can invite your guests via email. And all it is it's going to be on the calendar, add the conferencing. And so with that link in the add the conferencing, or you will get some link, it's meet.google.com/blah, blah, blah. that link then can be sent by email. It can be posted in Google Classroom. You can do a lot of things with that simple link. And so that's probably one of the easiest ways that you're able to start a Hangout. The other way, if you want to create an instant meeting, you can just go to meet.google.com and it will say join a meeting or start a meeting. You put in a little name and then your camera starts automatically and you say join now. So you can invite people. Again, it will give you a link. You can send them, but that is if you need to talk to someone. So in fact, Juliana and I were texting this morning like, oh, let's do a practice. And so texted her, said, we're going to start a meeting right now. And then that's how we started.
And Catherine, there's been a request in the chat if you could slow down just a hair. And I know that you have a lot to cover, and that just wanted to remind people that the slides will be available afterwards. So
thank you, Nancy. All right, so once you start your meeting, you're waiting for the guests to show up. So you're just sitting there waiting, and it's pretty awkward with the camera right there. But again, we've got to get used to being on camera. So there's that. And so here is the nice thing about Google Meet, is that there is a very, very simple interface. You have really two toolbars, one in the upper right and then one across the bottom. And we're going to start with the upper right, and I'll show you what those are, and then I'll show you some of the features at the bottom. But again, it's so hard that we're not in Google Meet. So that's why we're going to offer Juliana's Google Meet at the end of this presentation. So in the upper right, there is a chat feature. And so that's like what we're doing here in our Zoom feature. And so you are able to send little messages back and forth that way. Now, and I was experiencing this this weekend, and I was trying this weekend, and maybe someone knows, I could not find a way to remove a chat item. And so I was a little bit nervous about that. And so if anyone knows that, then let us know. But my friend and I, who were practicing for this webinar, we were trying that. In the upper right, this is where you will also see how many people are in your meet. And this is also where you can invite people on the spot. And so my cat was participating last night on my other device as I was trying to create this. And so anyway, you've got a list of all of the people in your meet from this. Now here is the brand new feature. Thank you, Google. As the host, as the teacher, if you set up that meeting, you can see a little arrow that allows you to mute or remove someone from your meet. And so those features are when you look at the people, and then you've got the arrows under each person's name. Let's see. And then across the bottom, there are only 3 controls. The first is mute, so with your microphone. The middle one is hang up, and the third is to turn your camera off. So those 3 in the middle, again, it's so much cleaner than Zoom, because sometimes I forget what I need to click because there are so many options here with Zoom.
Catherine, a quick question. Someone is asking if you can create one from within Google Classroom.
No, I couldn't find that, but it was from a calendar invite. But then you can when you post it in your calendar, that will show up in your Google Classroom calendar. So, so that was either posting the link from the calendar or from your Google Classroom calendar. The captioning feature is pretty cool. and it shows the captions. If I had audience members in here, I could see, you know, Katie speaking and Catherine speaking, and it has punctuation. So that's pretty cool versus the captioning that we're getting now. So again, that's just a single click at the bottom of the screen. And then you have the option to present your screen. So if you're sharing slides, or if you want to, if you happen to have two monitors and you want to share, you know, one window here and then one window somewhere else. Now, the problem, I was practicing with my friend last night, that Zoom is kind of nice because I'm able to move a picture so I can see people and I can see my slides at the same time, but I couldn't figure out a way to do that in Meet. And I was really having a problem with that. So what I did was I split my screens and I was able to kind of finagle that. So that's something that I did not find a solution. If anyone else has a solution, please share that in the chat. Or Nancy, or someone else. Have you seen that?
I have not.
Okay.
And there's another question about the calendar and Google Classroom. And Maria, I don't quite understand your question. So if you want to turn your microphone on and ask if we have time for that, Catherine.
I've answered to the extent of my knowledge of that. So
okay, so we'll maybe try to Google that for you and have an answer later. So as you were, Catherine, keep going.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then the last thing is 3 dots. And as Alice Keeler always says in Google, anytime you see 3 horizontal lines or 3 dots, you know something there is special with some settings. So when you click on those 3 dots, this is where you're able to record a meeting and change the layout and look at the individual settings. So that's it with Meet. And again, you can see how much more simplistic it is with the Google Meet versus Zoom. So that is an advantage, I think. With the layouts, we had a very quick team meeting this morning. Thank you, Nancy, for being willing. So this is what it looks like with one of the different layouts. So the person who's speaking is in the middle, and then you can see the slide layout over there. To hang up a call, you simply click the button in the middle, and then that will remove you from the meeting. So that's it with Google Meet. And again, we'll let you pop into Juliana's Meet here in just a second. So let's see, did you get any other questions or find any other, let's see.
No, I don't have any other questions in the chat right now, other than the one from Maria, and I'm working on Googling that.
Okay. How to Thank you.
Go out of full screen. So.
Okay. So again, from that post that I shared at the very beginning of the presentation, Brene Brown said she's been teaching online, and she had some really great insights and some norms. And so one of them was that this week really needs to just be about establishing, you know, what platform are you using, what are the norms for the community, establishing the community, check in on people. She also said, you know, how do we raise our hands? How do we use the chat? Those kinds of things. So that's important. She also mentioned in this article that she has had 2 people take their computers to the bathroom. And I was telling the teaching and learning team today, I'm like, I can't believe I'm going to say this in the webinar, but that is something that you may have to establish. The next, and I mentioned this at the very beginning, we need to consider the home realities, that not everyone has the same attention span, not everyone has the same bandwidth, the Wi-Fi, the webcam. They may be working in the closet, they may be working with all kinds of other craziness going on, and siblings or sick family members. So thinking about all of that. And then I say this in my remote learning mindsets webinar, online remote at-home instruction is not the same as classroom instruction. 30 minutes at a time, and I am over my time now. That is it that we have. You can do a little bit of instruction and then go back later, but we don't have the attention span for this. And so I think that is super important to remember. I can say from our team's perspective, we've been on webinars for 3 solid days and team meetings, and we've been doing this for 3 days, and I had to have some serious non-screen time this weekend. It was like, I've got to close and get out of Zoom or Google Meet. So, all right. How are we doing? Still okay. So let's, I'll give you just a few ideas, and you can, if you think of others, please pop those into the chat. One thing that you could do is set weekly office hours, not require people to come in, but if you're an administrator, say, I'll be in my meet room for, you know, from 1 to 2 today, or every Tuesday and Thursday for your students, something like that. So that could be a possibility. You could invite people in for small group instruction or PLCs for that matter, department meetings. One thing that I read, what you could do is you have a place to post something or read something or watch something ahead of time and then be ready to discuss it face to face if that synchronous time is available. And then if you're doing some kind of presentation, there's another option, which will be for another day, that you could use Google Slides while presenting in Meet, and you could have a Q&A within your Google Slides. So those are some things that might work. And then finally, for administrators or department chairs or other instructional leaders or just groups, you could have a hangout that is a happy hour, and then have that information for people to just come and share and vent.
Catherine.
Yes.
Catherine, I have a question. I'm sorry, I'm trying to use the chat and nothing that I write comes up. So, but I have been trying Google Meet, practicing with my daughter, and I am an occupational therapist and I need to do teletherapy. So it needs to be synchronous, and my sessions are going to be 10 minutes. I tried to include some YouTube for movement breaks, but the receiver, like my daughter, which I was practicing with, could not get the sound of the YouTube videos. I'm gonna turn off my microphone.
Okay. Okay. Yes, and I experimented with that yesterday, and I did find that there's a way to do that, and I think it's under the settings. Like you have to enable the computer audio or something like that. So maybe Nancy could do a little Googling for me for that. So it did work, because that was one thing that I did test yesterday. So, okay. So one thing that I found last week that I love, that this is a framework for remote lesson design. And this is something that I'm trying to follow in my webinars, and something that I want to just throw out at you, that I'm old school Madeline Hunter, and I know a lot of people have like the 5E lesson design model, but I love this idea for the simplicity, but then it has a lot of depth to it as well once we get into more of this routine. So we started with an intro. I talked about, you know, how are you feeling? What's something new? Brene Brown. The content, we had 2 pieces. I wanted to talk about just video mindsets, and I wanted to talk about the specifics for Google Meet. The collaboration piece, we just were doing the chat. And so that's how you were able to collaborate and ask questions and respond to each other. And then the demonstrate the learning, the synthesize the learning for the last piece. What we want to do is I want to have you all practice retrieval. So pop into the